Hi guys, welcome to another Brushmaster video this is a further video in our series on colour theory and how to use colours. So today, as you can see, we're going to be using red. Red, I think, is probably the easiest colour to try and use because for highlighting there's usually only two options, and that's yellow or white, and you're either going to get orange or pink. But you can change the nuances of those colours within the orange and pink that you choose. So let's do what we did with some of the other ones here, guys. So first of all we'll go black and white. So I've got blood red here, which is a very sort of quite a bright middle range sort of red, and we'll start adding black to that. And as you can see, the first highlight is quite nice. You know, it's quite a sort of burgundy looking red, or brownish red, but as we start adding more black, we start getting more and more desaturated and more into these dirty, muddy reds. It really becomes not great at all. I mean, it's a browny blacky colour, but it's very, very desaturated, and it just starts to lose colour. All right. And the same when we do the highlights, we'll go up with the highlights and we'll just add white. I've got ivory on my palette right here, and we'll find that the first tones are sort of alright, quite nice, but as we add more and more white, it just gets pinkier and more desaturated. And probably not, unless you're specifically painting something pink, it's not an incredibly useful tone to use. These pinks are quite nice, actually. They're not bad. But maybe if you were doing a red NMM and you were looking at those final highlights, that might be quite cool. So what we've gone here is we've gone our red, and then we're adding black. And this side we've got red, and we're just adding white or ivory to each of those, just like that. Okay, so that's our very basic transition, our basic run. But what can we see when we look at red on the colour wheel? We start to see we've got all these different options. Obviously we've got green on the other side of red is the perfect complement. We've got yellow and blue, which make up the triad. But we've also got this violet and orange, which if you mixed violet and orange you would get red. Okay, but violet itself is made of red and blue, so that's a bit confusing, that one. But of course orange is made by mixing red with yellow. But what we can do is we can try and use those colours to mix up some sort of slightly different tones. So two ways we can sort of use red in a certain way is by using green and blue. So we're going to take our red again now, and we're going to start down a green path. And because we're adding green, we're going to be starting to make a sort of brown colour. Same with all our other complement colours. Whenever you add them together, it makes a sort of brown colour. And it's a nice rich brown now. It's going to be different from this red with black in. You may not see a huge bit of difference at first, but as we add more and more colours to it, we can get a greeny red brown. So we're now heading more into sort of real sort of dark. That's almost black, that colour. But if we go back to the colour we had previously, now if we start adding other colours in, so for instance if we add orange, now we start getting a nice rich orangey colour, an orangey brown. And again, if we add yellow and a little bit of white, which is basically pale yellow, we start getting these really rich brown tones again. So this is similar to what we've seen in previous videos with whenever you start mixing in the complement colour, you do end up with this line of browns, but each one of them is going to be different because of those starting colours. So if you looked at this progression of browns compared to say the one we did violet, they are different. These are certainly different. So this is our green line here. Okay. Now, the opposite, well, not the opposite, but another way of doing with the red. These are sort of warmish tones. I find green is a little bit warmer, certainly than blue. But if we start going down the blue line, of course we are going to get violet, but we don't have to make it a blue violet. We can make it much more of a reddish violet, which is going to start, it's going to produce in this real rich burgundy colour. Okay, now we've got that burgundy colour, we can start then adding more red to that to start building a really nice transition. Now, rather than starting with that original red as our base coat, we could start with this red and blue colour. Just going to get a bit more of that red. And as we add more and more of this red, we are now pushing it more to that original red colour. It's still darker in value, but as we add more and more red, we are building towards that original red tone, which is going to be here. All right. So this progression, in terms of reds, this progression is much more pleasing than this way. And if I was going to be painting like a red armor or red skin, my starting point would be somewhere around here. One of these would probably be my mid-tone, and I would highlight up to red. This would probably be my highest value, and I would work down to this more of a burgundy, red violet type of colour. So that's a very nice progression of a red. So that works really nicely. Now, obviously the other way we've got, it's a very obvious one, but we can change it as we go, is yellow. So part of that perfect triad with blue is yellow. So if we just add yellow, we're going to be moving into really nice orange tones. So you can't see a lot of change in that one. But as we add more yellow, we obviously get into more orange tones. Now about there is like a perfect orange for me. That's really nice. You know, and we can just build this orange up. Now we get a much more yellow orange until we finally get to a sort of yellowy colour. So we're literally progressing from red to yellow. But what if we want to change it? What if we want to do something different with that? So the other thing we can get from red, we can get more peachy skin type colours. Now the way we're going to do that is if we add that yellow, we're obviously making an orange, and then we add our white to it. So yellow and white is going to now start pointing it more towards peachy colours. I'm going to get a bit more of my white. Sorry about that, guys. There. So we're going to start pushing now. So instead of this red going pink, now we can play with a whitish tone in there. And the minute it looks a bit pinkish, we can add yellow. you can see here. And we'll start moving now more into peach type colours. And again, we'll add more white. Add a lot of white this time. And we're getting a really nice peachy pink colour. But because of the yellow, it's adding that orange, a little bit of an orange tone to it, which is more our peachy tone. And right up till the end, when we get a nice bright highlight, again I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to that. And now we're getting more into more sort of skin tones, peachy, fleshy skin tones. So that's a really nice progression as well. The other thing we can do with a red, so the other thing we've got, we've been adding orange. Basically adding orange it's a bit superfluous because you're basically just adding yellow, because yellow and red is going to make orange. So if you keep adding yellow, you're really building towards an orangey tone. But what about if we add violet? What's going to happen to our colour now? So going down the violet track, we get a really rich, probably one of the richest reds you can make, is that red and violet makes a really nice, rich, slightly brownish red, which is really nice to work with. But if we keep adding violet, it's darker than our red, so it's going to get darker and darker and darker. So what I'm going to try and do here, if I mix up a very, very light blue, let's see what happens when we add that colour to our red. So now we're getting into more of a pinky or orangey burgundy, almost a claret type colour. And again, I've got to get some more white, guys, sorry about this. And now if we add white or pale yellow is a really good colour to add into this. It will add a really nice tone to it if we add yellow. So we'll add a bit of yellow, add a bit of white. And now, again, we're getting into these really lovely plum colours. And we can just keep adding and adding to that and just making these beautiful tones. Starting to desaturate now because we're really only adding in the pure white tones now. So it's going to desaturate, but it's going to be light here. So there, we've got some beautiful tones there. So, in summary, I think when you're painting red, it's very hard to start with a middle tone red here and highlight up without it looking pinky or orangey, right? If you want something to really appear to be red, then I would definitely say that you want to start with a darker tone of red and highlight up to the red. Okay, I would definitely be any red, I'd start with a darker red. And something I do quite a lot, I'll show you something right now. One of the mixes I do, I use this quite often. It's a nice way of doing it. So I've got a slightly different red here. I'm going to use brick red, which is a little bit darker, a little bit more desaturated. So one thing I will do, again, I'm using my colour wheel. So I'm going to use this brick red here, which is it's a really nice red. Don't get me wrong. It's a great red, and I would certainly go the darker side, shadow side, with purple. So this is going to give me this sort of tones. and I would just keep going with the purple to push that tone into the deepest shadows. So again, really nice rich colours. But then with the highlight inside, again we're going to start with that brick red, and now I'm going to add pistachio, which is this colour here. And as you can see from this colour, it's a yellow green. So when we're adding this, we are adding yellow and we're adding green, which are two colours here that we know work well with red, right? Obviously green is very dark, but when it's mixed in with the yellow, it's just a touch of it, we're actually highlighting that colour and making lighter tones. And this, it makes a very nice, a very different type of orangey colour. We start getting some really nice tones with this pistachio. You know, it's going to be orangey, don't get me wrong. There's certainly an orange tone, but it's a different orange tone. Because it's got that green in, which we know forces our colour to be brown, you can definitely see elements of a slightly browner colour. And we can work this right up to a very light tone with the pistachio. And it's a very sort of different type of progression. So there we are, guys. That's my thoughts on red and how to use red. Like I explained some things with flesh tone, which wasn't really so much a colour theory video, but when you're working with red, I think the important thing is, like I've said, is don't start with red. Right, if you're going to use, say, this red, mix up your darker values first and start from those and work up to it. These other tones you can work down, but working up from red, it makes things look very pinkish or very orangey. Alright, so when you attack painting red, think about what you want the final colour to look like. I mean, you can just paint something red and paint in very small shadows, very small highlights. That's fine. But if you want to really build a nice red, think about doing it that way. Okay then, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye now.